are back in business. So I'm glad to be back with you for another episode of Swami Live. Trying to make sure everything is working the way. Hold on. I'm just listening to myself. There we go. Supposed to be working the way it should. Let me get so I can monitor comments in case they get a little interesting. But yeah, appreciate you, Twitch and YouTube family. Always your support, as always. Thank you. Again, welcome to another episode of Soul Swami Live. This is Thursday Night Book Club. On Soul Swami Live, we generally discuss. Hold on, I gotta fix something. I felt like I was getting choked by the mic. I couldn't get it right? But anyway, Soul Swami Live, we discuss healing in all various forms: mental healing, physical healing, emotional healing, and spiritual healing. I think that's how I'm going to start saying that too, instead of just, you know what I mean, specify what type of healing. But we discuss healing in various forms. Thursday Night Book Club is a spinoff of our Tuesday night show in an effort to allow us to reconnect with the childlike energy in us by allowing someone to read to us. So you can catch us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook and Instagram. YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram. Yes, that's all of them. Generally, the beginning of every show, we do a little bit of energy work. This week, we are still continuing with our sacral. Sacral resides below your belly button and covers all of that area down there. The color for sacral, if you are into color therapy, you want to think orange, for it to be orange lights, orange foods, or orange clothing. You want to wear orange for that. The sacral is your energy point for your sexuality, your emotions, your creativity, your relationships, and your relationship with pleasure. The element for your sacral is water. So if you want to do some work with your sacral, then spend some time with some water, listening, planning, all those things. If you are into aromatherapy or essential oils, you want to think rose, patchouli, orange, clary sage. All of those are fantastic for your sacral. If you are into gemstones and crystals, you want to think tiger's eye, carnelian, orange calcite, citrine, amber, all those. That's what that big rock is right there, citrine. But I definitely am doing work on my sacral, so that's why I got that. Well, I got that when that was the forefront. But you know, the next thing we do is some sound, and I generally do the bowl. So we're gonna do a little bowl, a little bit of rain stick, and then we'll work on our breath work and our affirmations. During this time, all you have to do is just relax, clear your energy from the stresses of the day, and bring in some calm, relaxing energy for yourself. Change my mind. We're gonna do a little breath work. So today, I think I want to do triangle breathing. If you are unfamiliar with triangle breathing, it is you breathe in for a 3 count, you hold for a 3 count, and then you exhale for a 3 count. But during this time, all you really have to do is just focus in on your energy and your breathing, and I will keep the count for us as we go through the exercise. Definitely be intentional about some of your thoughts and think of some of the things that your sacral is the energy point from. Think about your creativity, think about your emotions, your sensuality, your pleasure, and your relationships, designing how you would like them to look. On the count of 3, we will start with triangle breathing. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Last time, family. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. And as we are thinking about the energy and shaping that energy, I want you to repeat these affirmations after me that will help with that alignment. I am a creative being. I deserve to enjoy life. I am emotionally balanced. I welcome sensuality into my life. And I am worthy and lovable. I am a creative being. I deserve to enjoy life. I am emotionally balanced. I welcome sensuality into my life. I am worthy and lovable. Thinking about a friend. I'm trying to do better with one with integrity. And that integrity for me starts with keeping my word with myself, actually responding to my feelings and emotions. So one of the soul family was recently in a car accident, and it just kind of popped in my mind. And not to necessarily put that business out there, but a car accident is one of those things where it's also a trauma point for a lot of us, and specifically this person was a trauma point because they had a very bad car accident prior. So then car accidents wind up being a space for fear and nervousness. So this car accident wasn't nearly as bad as their previous one, but in working for my integrity, keeping my word myself, and responding to my intuition in a way to make sure. So they popped in my mind, and I'm glad. So since they're on my mind, I want to let them know that I'm glad that wasn't a bad accident. Then we have a soul family who is saying goodbye to the matriarch of their family. And that is on my birthday. So it is marking the end of a timeline for them and their family. So I want them to know that, I'm also always thinking of them. And then we got another soul family member who is saying goodbye to the patriarch and their family. And I want them to know as well that I'm always thinking about them, and I definitely try to be here. Well, not try to be here. I am here to support the transition. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And being that I got one more person too, because one of my homeboys going through it, and I want him to know sorry too. But I'll probably call him after the show. Anyway, this is your weekly reminder that you can purchase the 7 Spaces of Healing for yourself, available now on Amazon. It is a good book to help you conceptualize or see 7 important spaces you want to cultivate within yourself, and those same 7 important spaces you want to make sure that you place yourself in as you want your evolution to authenticity. You want to make sure that you are in a space of love cultivated in yourself, and participating in a space of healing, a space of solitude, a space for trust, a space for risk without judgment, a space for accountability, and a space for forgiveness. Don't forget, purchase it now on Amazon. I don't remember where we are in the book, so don't get me lying. I don't remember at all. Oh, Jesus. Okay, so now I gotta go back to it. I was looking at Eat Right for Your Blood Type for a little bit, but I'm old. I can't even remember my blood type, so I gotta work with my doctor to try to figure out what that is so I can knock that out again. But we are continuing with Changeling. If you're not so much into books, she having the baby on the train. There we go. That's what she's doing. So Emma and Apollo are about to have their first child, and they wanted to have it at home, but unfortunately she started having contractions, and the baby was ready to come. When they ready to come, they don't care where you at. They're like, it's time to touch down. So they wound up being on the train because they couldn't make it all the way back home to be able to have the baby at home. If you're not a big book person, there's a TV show. Or if you are one of those people who like books and TV shows and books, whatever order you do it in, definitely check out Changeling on Apple TV. The only unfortunate thing is it's just 1 season, which leads us here to this book, so we can find out what happens in season 2. I don't know what happens after the mom leaves her gang. For lack of better words, she wound up joining the gang. Yeah. Chapter 16. There, in a stalled train, in the bowels of the earth, Emma bled and bore down. Apollo called out the two commands Kim had told him were always appropriate: slow down and just breathe. Apollo focused on nothing but his wife and their child. When Emma arched her back and grunted, he pressed his thumb into the small of her back just above her tailbone until her back went straight again. When she bled and pushed harder, he pressed her thigh and said, slow down, just breathe. When he saw the baby crowning, he had a moment of confusion. There was a baby's head, but it looked like it was wrapped in bubble tape. The amniotic sac hadn't burst yet, and it served now as a thin layer between the baby and Emma's pelvic bone. For all the agony she might be feeling, this little miracle, that her water didn't break right away, was what spared her just enough pain to survive this. Apollo watched his hand stretched out now, ready to catch her child. He felt like a witness and a participant. The child tethered between his mother and the world, in one place and another, alive and in that ether of the womb. Apollo felt as though he too balanced on this threshold, its head nearly out of a body still hidden. His child seemed like an emissary of the divine. Can you see his head? Emma asked. Apollo tried to answer, but only stammered. Then Emma's water broke, and she cooed with relief, and their child slipped right out. And Apollo Kagwa caught the baby before it touched the floor of the train. It's a boy, Apollo said. A boy, Emma whispered. Emma leaned forward into the woman. The woman kissed Emma on the top of her head. Emma had to stay on her knees for a few minutes until the placenta passed. This meant that for a short while, Apollo remained alone with his son. Apollo unbuttoned his shirt so he can hold the baby boy directly against his skin. Skin to skin is so important. It was crazy on how it started making those synapses fire. Whether they fire them or calming them down, skin to skin is so important. The baby didn't cry, didn't flutter his eyes yet, only opened and closed his mouth. Apollo watched his son take his gasping first breath. He watched that little face for what seemed like quite a while, an hour or an eternity. Can we call him Brian? Apollo croaked. He hadn't meant to ask that right now, at the moment of birth. He hadn't thought he'd ever want to name his son after his missing father. The question, the desires, simply slipped out. It was as if he'd been biding time on his tongue for years. I like that name, Emma finally said. Turning now, hands open for a child, Apollo brought his cheek to the baby's. Hello, Brian, he whispered. I'm so happy to meet you. Unit 3, Chapter 17. The baby came on a Friday night. The EMTs arrived 22 minutes after Apollo and Emma met the kid. As Emma predicted, they took her directly to Harlem Hospital, where she and the baby were kept under observation for 2 days. Though they assured Apollo he could go home without them, he spent both nights upright in a chair in Emma's room. By Monday morning, they were home in a taxi, and Apollo got them both in bed. He'd already given the boy a first name, and now he suggested a middle name. His middle name is not going to be Cowboy, Emma said, as she prepared herself for the climb into the bed. Apollo, Brian Cowboy, right. Apollo held Brian as if the baby were made of baccarat crystal. His eyes were open. He looked at nothing and everything. Give him, Emma said. He popped the pillows behind her. Apollo handed her their child, and she leaned close to his face and blew gently on his head. Brian came out totally bald. He had a faint overbite and a small chin. He looked like a turtle. In the full light of the hospital room, they both seen it and laughed about it. Brer Turtle, Apollo said, I'm going to get your mother some food. Emma brought her breast to the baby's face. She stroked his cheek, and she'd been taught to do. But when the baby opened his mouth, she stuffed so much of her breast inside that he coughed and turned away. Emma curled forward and stroked Brian's cheek and tried again, but it was another failure to latch. Emma had been trying to get this since late Friday night. At the hospital, every nurse and both doctors had offered different opinions about what she was doing wrong. In the kitchen, Apollo found the breakfast dishes they left before going out to work Friday morning. He'd been expecting to wash them after the dinner with Michelle. They'd been a family of two just that recently. He already had time remembering that ancient age before Brian. He washed the dishes. Lillian and Kim were both scheduled to arrive this morning. Maybe while they were here, he could make a supermarket run. Lillian and Kim had both come to the hospital, but the visits weren't long. Even Michelle made it in on Sunday morning, though she had a flight back to Los Angeles in the afternoon. She'd entered the room horrified, as if Emma was still down in that subway car giving birth. She couldn't stop asking what it smelled like down there. Neither of them remembered. The birth even made the news for the day. The Post, the Daily News, even mentioned it on NY1. It might have become more of a story if someone had been able to capture a clean video of the birth, but Cowboy had been as good as his word. I know that's right. Cowboy blocked everybody. Cell phone footage, that's why she ain't want him named Cowboy. Cowboy be lit. Cell phone footage from that night showed 4 black kids waving and smiling and looking gleeful. And generally speaking, news outlets don't find that sort of thing worth sharing. I know that's right. Apollo checked the back room. A couch and a television and 4 filled bookshelves were in there. So was the Moses basket they'd been using with Brian for the next few weeks as they slept him in their bedroom. Before Brian, this had been their their lounge. After Brian, it would be his room. Apollo scanned the space, imagining what they need. A crib, plush toys, a dresser for the blankets and clothes, a diaper genie, a few crates of diapers, and much more stuff than he could currently guess. They should have made all these purchases long ago. In fact, Emma had created a list, but then her job went to halftime with the possibility of losing the work altogether. And with that, they had to wait a little bit longer and plan a little bit better for exactly what they needed first. The Moses basket, newborn diapers, one-piece sleepers, baby wash, and washcloths. Those were the only things that make the initial cut. But now Apollo couldn't help wanting to give his son more. He closed his eyes and kissed the door flame. How long had he stood there before the buzzer rang? It's entirely possible he had fallen asleep upright. Kim and Lillian appeared in a cluster at the door. Both women carried large bags. Kim made a supermarket run for them, basic ingredients, and Lillian brought meals she prepared at home. 4 cartons of red bean soup, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, lasagna and samosas, 2 quiches, and oxtail soup. He set all their things down in the kitchen, then led both women into the bedroom where Emma tried to disguise the tears of frustration she'd been shedding as she still tried to get Brian to latch. Okay. See, in the TV show, they don't show that that's the issue. They make it seem she's just kind of stressed with the new baby and all this stuff. So, I don't know. I had some trouble with Apollo too, Lillian said softly. I didn't know what to do, and my mother wasn't with me. Emma nodded. She understood that problem. I didn't think I'd ever get it, Lillian said, but it just took time. Now Emma leaned into Lillian and breathed deeply. Lillian held her close. Kim turned a now naked Brian onto his stomach. I love that little blue butt, she shouted. Let me see what you're doing, Lillian said to Emma. Maybe I can help. Kim returned Brian to his mother. Emma brought him closer and stroked his cheek. The baby's eyes waggled and swam, and his mouth opened to pucker. Wait, Lillian said. Now she examined Emma's breast like a jeweler. She nodded gently, then sighed. It's too bad your breasts are the wrong shape, she finally said. Mom, Apollo shouted. He yoked his own mother to get her out the bedroom. Kim stepped between Emma and Lillian, showing Lillian her back. Emma didn't even cry out or sob at what Lillian had said. She just returned to lining her nipple up with the baby's mouth. Apollo assisted Lillian in unpacking the food and supplies, and once that was finished, he took her out to get coffee. She didn't understand what she said wrong. Apollo tried to explain 3 times but gave up. Eventually, he thanked her sincerely for the food and walked her back to the A train. On the way to the apartment, his cell phone vibrated with a text from Patrice. Estate sale today. Come with me. You got mouths to feed. He wrote back, too soon. Patrice wrote again, your family can't live with us when you get evicted. Apollo laughed as he slipped his phone away. He missed Patrice. Also, he knew he couldn't wait more than a week before he had to get back to his grind. Kim already had on her shoes and jacket when Apollo returned. He let her out and came back to the bedroom. He closed the curtains and the place went dim. He climbed in beside them. I had a rooster. My rooster pleased me, Emma sang. I held my rooster by the old willow tree. Apollo moved closer to his wife and son. My little rooster sang cock-a-doodle-doo. At one, she sang and each of them fell asleep in turn. First Apollo, then Emma. The baby kept his eyes open the longest, but soon enough joined his mother and father. At one point, well after midnight, Apollo woke and crept out of the bedroom. He found his bag, the one he'd been wearing the night Brian was born. He opened it to find a copy of Fields of Fire inside. In the kitchen, he opened his laptop and sent an email to that collector in Virginia. He attached the photo of the cover. The glow of the screen lit his face. I am Apollo the God, he whispered. As the God got to work, he fell asleep at the table within a half an hour. Chapter 18. Patrice sent word of an estate sale in the Bronx, close enough to Washington Heights that Apollo had to get on the road. No excuses and no more delays, and he had to bring Brian with him. That's when somebody was taking pictures of him. 6 weeks was the most. 6 weeks was the most time Emma could take off from work before her salary vanished. In the United States, this counted as generous. Going out the door that morning, she'd cried worse than she'd ever been in labor. Apollo promised to be careful with the boy, but that wasn't what crushed Emma. Of course, she trusted Apollo, but leaving her baby so soon after birth felt like stepping out of an airlock without a spacesuit. No source of oxygen. How would she breathe? Nevertheless, she had to do it. They couldn't afford for her to lose her job. Apollo rented a zip car for the trip. So something sturdy, a Honda Odyssey. The company gave each car a name. This one was Suave. He admired that level of self-delusion. He strapped the boy into the rear-facing car seat and arranged the armful of pillows he'd brought along on the floor and around the car seat. I know that's right. In case the baby fall out, first-time parents are hilarious. The baby lay surrounded by padding, and still Apollo never drove faster than 15 miles per hour along the Henry Hudson Parkway. Other drivers beeped and cursed, and they swerved around him. This bothered Apollo, but this bothered Apollo not one bit. The pair crept all the way to Riverdale section of the Bronx. The 22-minute trip took almost an hour. At one point on Dodgewood Road, a street sweeper passed them. This pocket of the Bronx turned suburban, nearly rural, with uneven single-lane streets and two-story homes sitting on large grassy plots. On Dogwood Road, Apollo found the place. A large single-family house with a driveway and a two-car garage. A familiar car by the curb, a red 2001 Toyota Echo. Its bumper sticker read, Librarian of Alexandria. Patrice Green had beat him there, and that man lived in Southeast Queens. Apollo turned the car off and arched himself over the front seat so he could see his son. Brian Cogwell watched the bright sky through the passenger window, mouth opening and closing as if he was actually feeding on the sunlight. Let's go hunt some books, Apollo said. Apollo came around and unlatched the sun. Wind rattled the property, and Brian seemed to focus on the quaking limbs of a tree. Apollo lopped on his baby Bjorn baby carrier and strapped the son in. Daddy's heartbeat would be the mood music for the kid. Apollo went through the baby bag, cross-checking like a pilot about to take flight. Bottle, 3 diapers, wipes, bird cloth, set of plastic keys for rattling, and finally, a small fluffy blanket. As he rolled the minivan's door shut, a man's voice could be heard from the garage. I didn't have that much gear on when I was fighting in Fallujah. Patrice stepped into the daylight, so tall his head nearly clipped the raised door. Patrice had a face like a catfish, with an overhanging upper lip and an errant mustache hairs. Eyes a little too small for his head. You were never near Fallujah, Apollo said. Patrice shrugged. Closer than you ever got. Apollo raised his diaper bag. Now I'm in my own dirty war. Patrice Green had never fought in Fallujah, but he did serve in the Army from 2003 to 2004 during Operation Iraqi Freedom in the 62nd Air Defense Artillery Regiment. He'd spent much of his time doing counter IED operations along a supply route in Iraq, in a city of 25 miles south of Baghdad, not far from the Euphrates River. He'd done that work and then returned to the United States. He'd been a manager of the AMC movie theater on 34th Street. He'd been a graduate student of Queens College in the library studies for 5 months, and eventually he became a used rare bookseller. The garage behind Patrice looked bigger than Apollo and Emma's apartment, filled now with 50 cardboard boxes of books. The top flaps of every box lay open. A treasure room already plundered. Grandmother, Patrice said. She died 4 months ago. Family finally got all the old books into box and put out the ad. Son-in-law let me into the garage. Other than that, he stayed out of my way. He's cool, Apollo said, bouncing into place lightly for Brian's benefit. I asked to use the bathroom and dude wouldn't let me in the house. Motherfucker said he ain't have a bathroom. Patrice gestured at the 2-story structure. 4-bedroom home, but no bathrooms. Imagine that. You'd think they would have checked before buying this place. Apollo laughed with Patrice just to keep from crying. Now Apollo looked inside the garage, scanning the open boxes as Brian wriggled against his chest. If Patrice had already been through all these, then he'd found everything worth anything. Grandma liked books, Apollo said. She have good taste? I found a few winners, Patrice said. No doubt he'd already set those books aside, but look at how full the boxes in the garage remained. That meant most of them were nearly worthless. The kind of stuff that would turn a profit only on the shipping. He rented the minivan to keep his son safe, but at least He had plenty of storage space. There's a few in the basement, Patrice said, pointing to a door slightly open near the back of the main house. You haven't been down there yet, Apollo said. For the first time since he stepped out of the garage, Patrice Green shrank. Nah, thought I'd leave something for you. Patrice Green, a big man and an expert bookseller, counter IED specialist, and child raised in the roughest part of Roxbury, did not like basements. He'd returned from Iraq uninjured but not unharmed. He had never explained his fear, but Apollo intuited it, and most importantly, never asked him about it directly. Okay, I just remember. So that is his homeboy that looked like Dave Chappelle with the bald head from the TV show. That dude almost made me cry one episode. Yeah, he hit him with something that he knew his friend was about to do. He knew, boy, when death comes to your door and you recognize what he looked like. He had never explained blah, 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 blah. A fair number of state sales in New York City took place in the basements of various apartment buildings, and Patrice Green never set foot in one of them. You hear that, Brian? Apollo said as he let the front flap of the baby Jorn fall loose and pulled the son free. Turned him around. Uncle Patrice is letting us take point. But we split whatever you find, Patrice said, looking over the baby's head. 60-40, that's the deal. Apollo lifted the boy higher. He'd expected Patrice to say something about the baby from the moment he'd shown up, but instead, they'd gone on about the books. This was the first time his best friend had met his child. Shouldn't that merit at least a comment? Apollo felt surprised by how much this moment bothered him. Look into his eyes, Apollo said, trying to act playful. What am I supposed to say to him, Patrice asked. Apollo raised his voice to a child's register. Tell me what happened in Iraq, Uncle Patrice. Patrice leaned close to the baby. Tell your daddy I said F you. I haven't mastered language yet, Patrice grinned. I'll teach you the gesture. Now Apollo had to smile. You're going to be a bad influence on me. No worse than your daddy's going to be. Apollo smushed Brian right up against Patrice's face. Can you spell PTSD? Then Apollo turned and moved to the basement door with the baby. Patrice shouted after him. I understand why your pops abandoned you. That's cold. With friends like these, who needs enemies? You heard? Chapter 19. The basement felt warmer than the garage. Down the Kagawa boys went. The basement sat as one grand open plain. In the far corner stood a boiler, a large white cylinder with a blue control panel, copper pipes running up into the ceiling, and a silver tube running outside through the wall. It looked like something from the set of James Welles' Frankenstein. The boiler rumbled now as if reanimating to life. In the opposite corner sat the washing machine and the dryer, and beside the two machines lay cleaning materials, shovels and rakes, and paint cans showing rust. The third corner of the basement was cluttered with children's toys that had been sitting down here for a decade or 4. Plastic dolls gone nearly gray, and their dresses threadbare. Toy trucks overturned and dismantled. Teddy Ruxpin looked like he died in hibernation. In the corner closest to the basement steps lay 7 cardboard boxes. Maybe the garage had been too full to accommodate them. Apollo went down on one knee. He sniffed his son's head. Didn't even realize he had done it until the smell made him smile. A moment later, Brian wriggled and squirmed. The fluffy blanket came out the diaper bag. Apollo spread it out on the right side of the boxes of the books. He set Brian down on his stomach, and the boy lay there, eyes wide, opening and closing his mouth, small gasps trickling out. Brian's feet wiggled, and his hands swam over the blanket. In a moment, he set his hands flat out. With a push, he raised his head. Tummy time, Apollo shouted, as if Brian hadn't successfully piloted an airplane. Okay. A moment later, Brian dropped his head back down onto the blanket. Apollo rolled him onto his back, and the baby looked up at the boards of the ceiling. Apollo left him to it and scooted forward to the first of the cardboard boxes. As he opened the flap, he looked back at Brian. My father, your grandfather, disappeared when I was 4 years old. I used to have this nightmare about him leaving. His name was Brian West. We named him after you. Brian wiggled his head from side to side and threw his hands out wide. I didn't hear anything about him, nothing from him until I turned 12 years old. Then, out of nowhere, he left a cardboard box at my front door. It had the tickets to a movie he and Grandma saw on their first date, the headshot of a woman who testified against the shady businessman Grandma worked for. The thing was like a time capsule. Brian lifted his chubby legs, then dropped them back down. He rocked his body slightly and looked like a turtle once more, trapped on his back and trying to turn over. I always wondered why he did it. Why did he leave the box and then disappear again? Apollo helped Brian roll back onto his belly. Now that you're in my life, I understand. He wanted me to know how much I had meant to him. He didn't want me to go my whole life thinking I just didn't matter. I don't know what kind of situation he was in at the time. I don't even know if the man is still alive, but I don't think he could have been all different from me. And I'm so happy with you already, little man. If I was trapped on Saturn, I'd still find a way to send a message and let you know you were loved. Apollo stopped moving, even breathing, and watched his baby boy labor to his left to lift his head. This small act, working to develop the muscles of his neck, would someday lead to sitting up, crawling, stumbling, sprinting, all that began here and now in the basement of a Riverdale home. Apollo felt so fortunate to witness it. With the baby only 2 months old, Apollo was a mess of raw nerves. He got back to work just to keep from crying. The books in the first box were worthless, so Apollo moved on to the second. The second box had a little offer as the first. The third box, too. Brian left a book behind, a children's book that he used to read to me. It's called Outside Over There. I know it from memory by now. The fourth box had nothing good in it, and neither did the fifth. Brian's head lowered, the muscles exhausted, so Apollo turned them over again. The baby whimpered there on his back, so Apollo came closer to check him. After pulling off socks and shoes and pants and undoing the snap of the onesie, he found the cause. As he changed Brian's diaper, he spoke to his son again. When Papa was away at sea, Apollo recited, that's how the book begins. That's the first page. Papa is gone and Mama sits out in the arbor. I had no idea what an arbor was. It's basically a small wooden structure people put out in their gardens like a trellis. She sits on a bench underneath the arbor, so Dad is far away and Mom is outside in the garden. He wrapped the boy back up, slipped the piss diaper into a special pouch provided in the diaper bag, and put away the wipes and the tube of coconut oil. But inside of the house, there's a little girl named Ida. She's very young, but she's left to take care of a baby sister all on her own. She plays a horn for the baby to try to help it sleep, but she's looking out the window while she makes music. She's in the same room, but even she's not watching the baby. And that's when the goblins sneak in. Brian fell asleep. Apollo scooched backward quietly. 2 more boxes to go. When he opened the 6th box, a cloud of fungus funk entered the air. Every book in this one, all hardcovers, showed black spots on the end papers. Worthless, ruined. Only 1 box left. Brian sighed in his slumber. It looked like contentedness, comfort. The 7th box could wait. Apollo took out his phone. Emma would want to see the baby like this, the holy vulnerability of their sleeping infant. He snapped 11 pictures and sent all of them to Emma's phone, even the blurry ones. He couldn't bear to erase even those. Then he went on Facebook and posted all 11 again. Lillian joined Facebook the day Brian was born, and she always wanted more images of the kid. This is how he justified what he did, even as he knew what kind of parent he'd become. The kind that used to make him gag as recently as 2 months ago. The ones who assumed their online friends were gluttons for punishment. Here's my baby lying on his back, and here's my baby lying on his back. And how about this? And how about this one? Blurry baby on his back. Good God, the vanity of it all, the epic self-centeredness. He knew all this and still uploaded 11 pictures of Brian. Decorum be damned. He was in love. Then he hit post. While Brian slept, Apollo turned back to the last box in the basement. He decided he'd go slow with this one. At the very least, it would save him from checking too quickly for likes on all of Brian's photos. Chapter 20. A screaming comes into the apartment. It has happened before, but there's nothing to compare to it now. This time, it's the loudest Emma Valentine has ever heard. It's Apollo practically howling as he unlocks the front door and rushes the living room with their son wiggling in the baby bajorn. At first, she thinks maybe Brian's been hurt, but Apollo's holding a book out in front of him like a shield. To make the moment more chaotic, Emma has the television on and the breast pump running. The apartment sounds as loud as a rocket attacking during World War II. I got it, I got it, I got it, Apollo shouted as he'd been shouting since he strapped Brian back into his rear-facing car seat and drove the Honda Odyssey home. He'd been chatting those 3 words all along the Henry Hudson Parkway. Then, when he got pulled over by the police and was given a ticket for driving less than normal speed of traffic, Apollo had this incredibly important news to share with his wife, the kind of thing that would bear no interruption, or so he thought. Now he lowered the book into his left hand slightly, and with his free hand pointed at his wife's chest. What are you wearing? Emma Valentine looked down at her chest. She wore a beige nursing bra, and a pair of suction cups were attached to the nipples. Those cups fed into a pair of plastic bottles collecting her breast milk. A pair of clear tubes, each thinner than a straw, ran from the cup towards the breast pump to the floor. The pump remained on, generating repetitive sucking noise like something of a mechanical squid would make. Okay, excuse me. All right, thank you, Shannon. Okay, where are we at? Would make as it thrust itself through the sea. Emma stopped and turned off the machine. She stood again. How have I never seen you using that thing? You seen me use the breast pump, she said, but not with the bra attached. It's like hands-free milking. I don't want you to call it milking. I'm pumping. She mimed a soft slap to his face, then pulled at the baby bajorn so she could look at Brian. She didn't wait for Apollo to unstrap the kid, but did it for him with one hand. With the other, she detached the cups from her bra and brought Brian close to her chest. He sniffed the air, an animal out of the root, and attempted to latch. It took 2 tries, but Emma remained patient and sure until they were connected. How was the first day? Apollo asked. She might have answered him, but Brian's face captured her attention, and she was quiet watching him. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you. She contorted her neck so she could kiss the boy's head, even as he sucked. The television remained the only thing making the noise now. It showed a home improvement show. I'm just not sure we'll get this whole project done in 5 weeks, the man on the screen said, speaking directly to the camera. We'll blow our budget if we don't, the woman beside him said. Emma picked up the remote and muted the screen. She settled onto the couch, never once looking away from Brian. On the television, the man and the woman who'd been fretting about budgets and timetables wore clear goggles and swung sledgehammers at the walls of an ugly kitchen. That part looks like fun, Apollo said. I like to watch demolition, Emma said, smelling Brian's ears as she sat on the couch. Sitting together, Apollo finally revealed the object he'd been holding when he entered the apartment screaming. To Kill a Mockingbird, Emma read out loud. Apollo opened the book, flipped to the copyright page. A true first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, he said, with the original cover, the whole thing in fine condition. That alone will make this worth $5,000. When she dies, that'll at least double the price. Emma winced. Did he bite you? No, what you said was morbid. Sorry. Emma leaned against Apollo, shifting Brian so he tucked closer against her ribs. You know Harper Lee never does interviews or anything, but also never signs books. Apollo opened to the title page. Well, she signed this one. Emma lifted her head. Wow. And she signed it to someone. Pip. Who's Pip? Oh, Pip, Apollo asked, enjoying the build-up. That's just her best friend from childhood. He turned out to be a writer. You might have heard of too. Emma, a well-versed librarian, gripped Apollo's leg tight. Truman Capote, she whispered. She looked at the book with a few reverence, gasping at the kind of difference this one little item might make their lives. You know, they put out the second novel of hers this summer, the one where Atticus Finch is all racist in the cry. Why I know Atticus Finch is racist in the crybaby. Seems like nobody liked it. They didn't want to see Atticus in that light. It was too honest. I think Miss Lee knew the deal even back then when she signed this book decades ago. Check out what she wrote to Truman, Apollo said. That's the cherry on the banana split. Emma leaned closer so she could read it, and Brian twisted her in her grip. Milk dribbled from his lips, and the breast released a faint spray that dappled his cheek. Here's the daddy of our dreams. Apollo closed the book. This would outdo the Agostino's haul by a factor of 10, maybe more. With the signature and the dedication, this find could end up being national news. They could buy another apartment with the loot it would bring, or at least put a nice down payment. Not a huge place. This was still New York City, but it could be theirs. Apollo had understood exactly how fortunate he'd been when he brought this book out of the basement in Riverdale. When he knocked on the other side door and called out for an old woman's son, he tried hard to sound calm. The man didn't even let Apollo into the house, suggested they finish the transaction out there in the driveway. Apollo offered $50, trying not to choke on the lowball offer. He let the guy talk him up to 100 so he would feel like he got one over on Apollo. The whole time the man kept checking his phone. He even stopped talking mid-sentence to return a text. Apollo paid cash and practically levitated back to the minivan. Apollo left Emma and Brian on the couch. Home improvement shows were in heavy rotation, and Emma enjoyed vegging out to the next one with her son clutched tight. Apollo went into the back room, the former den and Brian Future's bedroom. There he found a footstool and pawed at the highest shelf in the closet. He found a box and set it on the floor. Improbabilia. How long had it been since he opened this lid? Pawed through the contents? Years. But tonight he felt ready to add to the time capsule. He opened the lid. The only thing that he removed was a children's book. He thought he might start reading it to his son just as his father had once done with him. From his wallet, he fished out Emma's red string. It had gone bunchy and tight, so he pulled it straight. 4 or 5 inches of frayed red thread, and yet he had to admit the fabric seemed too warm to his touch, as if it still burned with sentimental magic. He set it down inside the box. He went to the bookshelf in the room and found the second book he thought he'd bought at Miss Grabowski's, the one he'd used as camouflage for Fields of Fire. He scanned over the cover. Once Upon a Die. That didn't even make sense. He leafed through the worn-down thriller. A few pages were falling out. He couldn't sell this piece of hot garbage if he tried, but every time he looked at it, the book would remind him of a night his son had been born. He laid it in the box. That's cute. Stuffed it in the front pocket, and even found the ticket that he'd been given on the drive home this evening. That too? Why not? When Brian grew old enough, he'd sit with him and tell him the story behind it. He planned to be there to explain everything. Last, Apollo placed a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird inside. What better place for a find like that than in a magic box? Apollo closed the lid, climbed back up on the footstool, and hid Improbabilia in the dark. We'll do one more chapter. Chapter 21. Yeah. Chapter 21. Brian let them sleep in this next morning. Didn't wake up till 5 a.m. A new record. Apollo had been awake since 3. The old record. His body anticipated Brian's wake up, and he couldn't convince his nervous system to rest again. Anyway, he had all the book excitement brewing too. Though it should be wholly unnecessary step, he decided to hire an appraiser through the American Society of Appraisers, so he'd have outside certification of the book's authenticity. Big outfits like Bowman's had their reputations for quality and rare books, but a guy like Apollo might need some outside body to assure potential buyers. By 5, Emma's breast was so full they hurt her. They become used to the 3 o'clock wake up too. Apollo brought Brian to her. She fed him lying on her side, feeding and cuddling him while still largely asleep. When she finished, she forced herself up to change his diaper. "I'll take him to the park," Apollo whispered. Emma nodded and grinned appreciatively and tried to kiss her husband, but didn't have the energy to stay upright. So she fell back into the bed and rolled the blankets around her until she looked like an enormous enchilada. Today would be Emma's second day back at work, and another 2 hours of sleep might mean the difference between showing up incredibly tired instead of utterly drained. Apollo kitted up, dressed the baby and himself warmly, slipped Brian into the bajoran, and they were out by 5:30. So in the TV show, all the fathers be hanging out at the park. It definitely don't look like 5:30 in the morning, but they hanging out at the park, which is why all the fathers be hanging out with their baby at the park, which is lit. Apollo had become one of those men, the new dads, so much better than the old dads of the past. New dads wear their children. New dads change their babies' diapers 3 times a night. New dads do the dishes and the laundry. New dads cook the meals. New dads read the infant development books and do more research online. New dads apply coconut oil to the baby's crotch to avoid diaper rash. New dads bake sweet potatoes, then grind them in the blender once the baby is old enough for solid foods. New dads carry the diaper bag, really a big old purse, without awareness of shame. New dads are emotionally available. New dads do half the housework, really more like 35%, but they're still so much better than zero. New dads fix all the mistakes the old dad made. New dads are the future, or at least they plan to be. But since they're making all this shit up as they go along, new dads are also scared as hell. 5:30 in the morning, and the parents were already out at Bennett Park. There were moms in the huddle at one end of the playground over by the swings. Apollo sought out the other dads, four of them already there by the padded play squares. Apollo made five. Most of them in their 30s or early 40s. One guy might be 50 or just in terrible shape. Apollo greeted the other fathers and they greeted him. He didn't remember the names. They didn't remember his. They knew the names of each other's children, and that mattered more. Brian, the men called one by one as Apollo underhooked the bajorn. Apollo greeted the other kids, Megan and Emma Jean, Isaac and Shoji. The children weren't required to respond. The greetings had been for each parent to hear. Apollo sat Brian on his belly on the black rubber padding while the other kids tore around the playground. At 2 months old, Brian remained by far the youngest. Megan and Emma Jean flickered with interest at the sight of a baby. Isaac and Soji completely ignored him. While on his belly, Brian puckered up his lips and basically kissed the ground a few times before Apollo rolled him onto his back. Brian reached out and Apollo slipped a set of large plastic keys into the baby's hand. Brian gripped and yanked and stared at the keys. He shook them wildly. His face practiced expressions, squinting at the eyes, pursing his lips as if he was suspicious of them. The other dads crowded closer and asked after Brian's development, like coaches eyeballing a rival player. Had Brian rolled over on his own yet? Transferred objects from one hand to the other? Raked up Cheerios by himself? The fathers banded these questions, about half curious and half competitive, but Apollo didn't mind. In fact, he enjoyed it just as much as them. He said nothing out of the tremendous book he'd found the day before. Why would he? None of these men talked about their jobs or their hopes and dreams, not when there were children to discuss. Apollo took out his phone and snapped a dozen pictures of Brian there on the rubber matting. The post from yesterday, the pictures of Brian in the Riverdale basement, had been a hit, at least the first few. Apollo logged on to Facebook and, just to be thorough, uploaded the images he just taken. All 12. All right, family. We're going to wrap up book club tonight with chapter. We'll start again with chapter 22 on next Thursday. I hope I can catch you here Tuesday where we'll finish up the law of cause and effect, but we'll start our discussion on the law of compensation in the sense that what you get paid for what you put out there. So join us Tuesday as we continue discussing the 12 universal laws, wrapping up the law of cause and effect, and starting on the law of compensation. If we can't get you there Tuesday, I hope to have you back here Thursday as we continue reading Changeling. And if you want to catch up, you can always catch the show on Apple TV. All this is at 7 p.m. on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch. Don't forget, you can buy Seven Spaces of Healing to help you create a foundation for your healing evolution. And before we go, I want to remind you that you are a creative being. You deserve to enjoy life. You are emotionally balanced. You deserve sensuality in your life, and you are worthy and lovable. Thank you, family. Okay, hold on. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your support. And we will continue this party next week. Peace.